lovelies. You're welcome back to Reviews and Recaps. Let's get into Ready to Love. So the episode started with nephew Tommy basically telling them that, it's going to be family day. Introduce your connections to your family, and the power to eliminate is now returned back to the men. Mr. Tony decided to invite his sister over to meet Morgan. And that was wild. When I tell you Tony's sister was not with the BS, Tony is like, oh, I met someone's sister and I think she could be the one. And girl, you should have seen her face. She was not having it. She's like, the one? They were all the one. Like, She was not here for it. Bear in mind that she's the one that knows Tony the best. So, of course, she knows that Tony ain't serious because she did not believe that he has so-called met the one. Interesting stuff. Over on the other side, Anthony was meeting his little cousin and wanted Cynthia to meet his little cousin. So they start talking. The cousin is like, oh, what do you like about her and what don't you like about her? And so Anthony is like, his main concern about her is her baby daddy and the energy that he was bringing. It looks like he's not ready to fully let her go yet. And I'm like, do you know what? That is a red flag, because the way he was coming across was pretty intense and Cynthia did not do anything to stop it. So I understand his concerns and I would share those concerns as well. Back to Morgan and Tony. So Morgan walked in this yellow dress. It was really pretty, long. She was like, I am covering everything. Let it not be because of this body that they will say no. But yeah, she came in looking like an angel. So she starts talking to Tony's sister, right? So she's like, oh, we're getting along well. But the only thing that she's concerned about is Tony's very macho, which she likes. But she doesn't like the fact that he doesn't know when to tone it down when they're communicating. And that she would like to see and talk to someone about being able to communicate. And then the sister was like, I don't like that. I'm like, you don't like what? So the sister was like, the fact that you have to go see someone to learn how to communicate. Okay, so I have two comments on that. One is slightly for it and one is against it. Okay, so one, I think she might mean that if you are actually seeking therapy or counseling at this early stage, then maybe there's something wrong with the whole relationship and the relationship shouldn't happen in the first place, right? However, it could also mean that she is automatically against therapy or counseling, which of course that's a problem. You know what I mean? So if she is truly against counseling and Tony is also against counseling, then that's a problem. But I take it that it's so early in the relationship for you to be having communication issues like that in the first place. Back to Anthony and Cynthia. So Anthony's best friend was having a conversation with Cynthia, tried to get to know her. Of course, he raised the issue of the baby daddy, and Cynthia was like, she will handle it, and that's not going to be an issue. And so Cynthia was like, I know he's a good father, I know he's this, and I also know he has a social life. And then the cousin was like, no, not so much a social life. He doesn't really go out and stuff like that. And then Anthony jumped in and was like, she tricked you with that question. She was just trying to find out. And so he's like, oh, really? So, of course, Cynthia promises that, if they're dating, she would bring Anthony out to all these functions and whatnot. I think their interaction was, really cute. Even in the interaction, he was saying that he really liked Cynthia and whatnot. And so after Cynthia left, they had a quick chat and he was saying that, he likes Cynthia and whatnot. But of course, it's only Anthony that will be able to determine if Cynthia is a good fit for him. And I'm like, yeah, fair enough. Back to Mr. Tony. So his sister was like, she likes Morgan, but she does not know if she likes Morgan for him. I'm like, awkward. Over on the other side, Andrew invited his sister and his niece to meet his connections. So they're all settled. He starts telling them that all the women he's dating have kids, that Jeffrey has 3 kids and Cynthia also has kids. And then they were like, well, you have no kids. So they were not feeling the fact that he's dating women with kids when he has none, right? So Cynthia walks in this badass outfit. I'm like, Cynthia was like, I'm going to show them that I got a flat belly all the way through, honey. She's like, kids or no kids, that buddy is banging. So Andre's family start asking Cynthia oh, do you want kids? She's like, yeah, she wants 2 more kids and a dog. And I'm like, okay, fine, at least they know that if she gets with her brother, then they're gonna have at least 2 kids. So she's like, okay, cool with it. So then Jeffrey walks in. Jeffrey's wearing this long dress. She's like covered up. She's like, I'm in the family. Let me make sure I'm like fully covered. No more gym outfits. I'm like, all right, switch it up. So then she walks in. The sister was like, oh, you're so pretty. And then got up and hugged her. I'm like, yeah, she is pretty. And she has that like feminine like aura that is like quite inviting, especially when you first meet her. So yeah. So then the part that got me was Cynthia was saying in her confessionals that she saw Jeffrey came in with the mom dress, the collar was up to the neck, the arms was that long. She's like, who's this? I'm like, girl, she can switch it up, switch it up. Like, you're the only one coming to meet the family in that outfit. Like, I honestly, if you're dating a Nigerian man, you better wear the longer sleeves if you're meeting the family, because you don't know who you're gonna meet. Then I tell you, Andre's sister sat grilling Jeffrey as soon as she sat down. So Andre's sister was like, you have 3 kids at 31. That's a liability. Andre does not have any children. And the children's fathers are not in their lives, which means Andre would be stepping in that role. So, like, what do you bring to the table? And then she's like, well, I'm every single thing a man could want. I'm like, girl, no. Jeffrey, I like you, girl. But that's not a way to answer that question. So Cynthia over on the other side is like, she has like 2 master's degree, 2 bachelor's degree, 2 businesses, and the fact that her kids are good. So he's not going to be a stepdad. He's going to be a bonus dad. Which I'm like, okay, fair enough. I don't know what other conversation ensued, right? But at the end of it, the sister was like, whichever way it goes, I was happy to meet both of you, and it was a pleasure to meet both of you and stuff. And so I'm like, Jeffrey must have charmed her eventually then, because, or maybe she's just saying that to save face. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section below. Do you think like Jeffrey managed to charm her later, or do you feel like they were just saying it just to like, make it a little sweeter at the end? It was hella fake, guys, because as soon as the ladies left, when I tell you, the sister was like, I want none of them. It's too much of a baggage. And I completely understand, as someone who doesn't have any biological children yet, right? When I am dating and like someone tells me, oh, this person has 3 kids or 2 kids and is interested in me, I'm a bit like, no. You have like too many kids. Like, I don't have any yet. So for you to have 2 or 3, that's a whole family in the first place. I'm not here for that. I'm sorry. So moving on, Morgan and Tony had a date, I guess a debrief date to catch up after the shenanigans. This is where it got interesting. So Tony starts talking about the fact that his sister was taken aback by the whole counseling thing, and so was he. And then Morgan is like, yeah, but let's back it all the way up. It's been a rocky ride with you. For instance, at the start, you had an entanglement with Natasha. It's like you went for the lowest hanging fruit that left on day 1. I'm like, oop. Funny enough, I didn't even remember who Natasha was until like I was reading comment section, and I was like, oh, Natasha, like the lawyer. Yes, that almost looks like Simone. Yes, I remember. Am I surprised? No. Morgan, what are you doing, honey? What does this man have to do to you for you to leave him? I don't understand. Like, have you guys had sex? Because like it's very much given you don't want to leave because you feel like you've given a part of you to that man. Like, I don't understand it, sis. So of course he tries to clean it up, and he's like, Natasha's a beautiful woman. Morgan will like shut it down. Morgan's like, no, she ain't. I'm like, oh, girl, I'm sure everyone is beautiful in their own rights. Don't say that. But anyways, I understood that she was not really wanting to hear about Natasha in the conversation. So of course, Tony then changed the subject to talk about, yes, I'm a man with faults. I've made mistakes, but I still feel like we can prevail. Tony was doing his little speech. I don't trust Tony, Morgan. Get out. Like, Morgan, I feel like I just want to be a big sis right now and shake you. And I'm not even as old as you are. Like, I just need to shake you a little bit, sis. Like, what is going on? Am I the only one that thinks like Morgan is being so silly staying with this Tony guy? Let me know in the comment section below what you guys think. So moving on, Jeffrey and Mark Anthony went out for a date. So Mark Anthony was like, I feel like we haven't talked as much lately. And so Jeffrey was like, honestly, it's been hard to like manage having both connections, and that when it comes to like what happens next with her kids, she just thinks that her and Mark would not be like the right fit. And so because of that, she just wants to focus on her connection with Andre. I was like, oh, interestingly, Mark Anthony looked a little sad, or was it just me? Like, he looked a little sad, like he really liked Jeffrey. But to be honest, I don't think it would have worked, because 3 children and with a man that does not have any children and is quite, I don't want to say he's immature, but he's a lot younger, that would have been so hard and like almost impractical for it to work. Also, I don't get the impression that Mark has actually taken care of a lot of children in the past, but Andre has, and Andre is quite a lot older, so he has a lot of experience of like taking care of children as well, like he said. I know he mentioned it at some point. So yeah, I appreciated how Jeffrey was like super honest about how she was feeling. She did not like sugarcoat it or anything. Of course it was emotional. They held hands and you can tell like there was feelings both ways, but it's just they just knew that it wasn't going to be like a really good fit. So back to the connection with Anthony and Cynthia. So Anthony decides to take Cynthia on a romantic date at the beach. He had everything set up. He had some roses there. She really liked it. She walked in like, oh my God, so sweet. And I'm like, all right, Anthony, like, look at you stepping up now. This is the thing. When a man really wants to be with you and he likes you, he gonna step up. So if he's not stepping up, he does not want you. That's just the truth. That is just what that is. So yeah, stop pushing yourself or accept embarrassment minimum from men, okay? That's just a little sidebar. Over on the other side, Mercedes was meeting Mark Anthony's cousin. So Mark Anthony's cousin starts saying to CDs, have you been married before? Have you ever been engaged? And she's like, no. And then Mark is like, oh, those are some really good questions. I've never even asked those. I'm like, so what do you guys do? What do you do? Those are like the basics that you ask on a first date, even before the first date. Like, seriously, what have you been asking this woman? Like, all you guys do is like kiss and kiss and kiss. There isn't like that deep, intimate getting to know you thing. Like, what are you guys talking about? So then Mark Anthony's cousin starts talking about the fact that Mark Anthony wants to move back to New York, and how does Sadie feel about long distance relationships? So of course she looks like she didn't know that Mark Anthony wanted to move. And this is what I mean. So what do you guys talk about? So then Sadie was like, she can make it work, and she thinks he's worth it. But at the same time, that's something that is giving her a cause to like think about it, like pause and think, basically. So the guys went back to the men's deliberation. So they start talking about the dates that they had. So Anthony was like, it went well, and that his cousin like came with the gun, and then Cynthia was also passionate back and he loved it. Mark Anthony talked about the fact that his cousin gave a thumbs up for Mercedes and was like, oh, she a good shorty. I'm like, who uses the word shorty in this day and age? But okay. All right, Mark Anthony, whatevs. So then Tony starts talking about the fact that his sister really liked Morgan, but did not like that Morgan mentioned that they needed to go counseling. And so Tommy was like, ooh, that early. And I think that's also probably what Tony's sister meant as well. So then he's like, yeah, well, I think she probably used the wrong word, maybe some coaching, but not necessarily counseling. And then Tommy was like, well, she said counseling. I'm like, yeah, you better tell him. She said counseling for a reason. So let's not start acting like she meant something else. That's the thing about Mr. Tony. I don't think he understands the implications of his actions and how serious they are. And so her saying she needs counseling, I understand it's pretty serious. And I love when Tommy said coaching and counseling is the same dang thing, because that's the truth, right? It's like counseling is some form of coaching. Like, either way, you're going to have to speak to somebody, okay? So, whatever it is, it doesn't matter if the person refers to themselves as a coach or therapist or counselor, it's still some form of coaching or counseling, okay? So then Tony starts talking about the fact that she brought up the entanglement that Tony had with Tasha. And Tommy was like, Tasha, like, do you want Tasha? And he's like, yeah. So he starts saying to Tommy that, Natasha slipped her number when she was leaving, like at the elimination round, to him. And then they hung out, went on a couple of dates, and then they were intimate. You know what's funny, right? Tommy was like, and you did what? What happened? He was like trying to get the scoop. But as soon as he got the scoop, he's like, I don't really want to talk about, the young lady who isn't here. Let's talk about you and Morgan. I'm like, dude, 5 minutes ago you wanted the scoop, but now you have the scoop. You're like, all right, let's move on. So Tommy is like, so how are you and Morgan now? Tony is like, yeah, she's fine. And so Tommy was like, you don't sound sure. I'm like, yeah, like, I don't know who you're trying to convince, yourself or us, like, but it ain't working, honey. So Tommy is like, you better make sure that this ain't bothering Morgan, because we know what happens when things bother Morgan, okay? And then they show the playback of the Negate scenario. When I tell you I hollered, like, that is so funny. I can't. You see the way the guys were laughing and chuckling when Tony was talking about the entanglement. They were not. They were like, oop, oop, oop. Mark Anthony was having a field day. He was absorbing every information. So after Tony and Tommy finished the conversation, so he's like, anyone else broke my rules? And then he's asking the guys, and then the guys are like, no. And then Anthony was like, I plead the fifth. I'm like, what have you done? I want to hear it. So Andre starts telling the guys about what happened with his sister meeting Jeffrey and Cynthia. So Andre is like, oh, she didn't really like the fact that Cynthia had 2 kids. And so Tommy is like, but Jeffrey got 3. I'm like, yeah, Andre, just go and follow Jeffrey to the sunset, because that's who you want. It is clear as day. Because even the way you brought it, you didn't even say the Jeffrey thing. It's like you minimized the Jeffrey thing and then you said the Cynthia thing first. But anyways, he then said that his sister did not really like Jeffrey that much, but it's his decision. I'm like, okay, all right, sir. We know you're going to choose Jeffrey. Go ahead and choose Jeffrey and move over to the other side. So Tommy is like, Andrea, you got to decide who you want between Cynthia and Jeffrey. And so he decided to take Cynthia out. So he starts telling Cynthia how hard the week has been. It's been super intense. It was like getting awkward. And so Cynthia basically starts saying that, well, she feels like she has the 2 greatest guys in her top. But she feels like Andre doesn't have the 2 greatest girls. I'm like, oop, she went for it. So Cynthia starts talking about, like, it's like choosing between a rock and a diamond. I'm like, Anna, oop. Cynthia was not taking any prisoners. Do you hear me? This is where it gets interesting. So he went on a date to try to eliminate Cynthia, but then did not eliminate Cynthia. I'm like, bruh. So I guess Jeffrey going home, or what's happening? Because I don't think Jeffrey is going to fight for him in the same way Cynthia was like telling him all the good things about him and all of that. What I'm not sure of is, Cynthia, like, who do you want between Andre and Anthony? It's like, I'm not understanding. Like, you kissed Anthony, you said that was your top pick and whatnot. So now I don't really understand. It's almost like you want to win. And I don't know. Am I the only one that is getting that impression? Because it's like, choose who you want to be with then. Like, or maybe I'm just being too hard on her and like it's just really difficult for her to choose because she has 2 great connections. So fair enough. I'm going to give her some grace. Anyways, that was the end of the episode. Please give this video a thumbs up and please subscribe if you haven't already. Let me know in the comment section what you thought about the episode. And looking at the preview, it looks like all of them stayed until the end. But then of course we don't know like who's gonna say no to who and whatnot. So I'm actually quite excited for the next episode. But yeah, give this video a thumbs up and I will see you guys later. Thank you. Bye.